Welcome, everyone, to the workshop with me and Mr. George Leith. Just off the top, this is an open discussion, so I want you to jump in the chat. There is that Q&A feature, I think. Is there? No, I lied. There is no Q&A feature. I thought there was. No, I guess that's, ignore me. So drop it in the chat. We want to hear from you. Talk to each other. Talk to me. We're monitoring. We have like Tanmay and Ariel, and I see Ed and Nicole. They're going to help monitor that as well. If you do need links to anything that you received in Connect, we can also share them here as well. Mute yourselves when you're not talking. I do have the power to mute you. Who just coughed? Who just coughed? I don't know. Who was that? Shame on you. Let's do it. I'm excited to be here. You guys know these are one of my favorite type of sessions to run. I love our partners. I love to have the interactive conversation. So, I lost my mouse. Apparently my battery just died because of course it did. What is happening? Oh, can you all still see my screen?
Yes.
Yes?
Oh. Always a good call before presentations to change your mouse batteries.
Yeah, well, it's actually you have to charge it. But anyways, you all know this guy. George Leith is the Chief Customer Officer at Vendasta, and he's the leader of the customer-facing sales guild of over 250 sales professionals. He's dedicated his success by or his passion for training, coaching, and mentoring an ever-growing Vendasta customer base. That's all you find, folks. Of our 65,000 plus channel partners, entrepreneurs, and sales professionals. Most of you know that George created the Conquer Local podcast in 2016, and that's when was it 2016? I feel like it was 2019, actually. George, I think you're lying. 2019, holy shit. Created in 2019 for frontline sales professionals, channel partners.
That is accurate.
I don't think so. We can talk about that later.
Well, 5 seasons.
5 seasons.
2019, I don't know if that adds up.
2016, I don't know if that adds up either.
I'll trust George on this. He was there.
Thank you.
And if you don't know, it is a business podcast on Apple Podcasts. So you haven't listened to it yet, please do. There's lots of juicy nuggets in there. Like I said, George has a passion for coaching and mentoring, sales professionals, entrepreneur, and because of COVID, he created some amazing content in the Conquer Local Academy, where we have over 16,000 learners enhance their digital skills. If you haven't checked it out, the monthly recurring revenue, the Snapshot Ninja, and also the, transform your social selling with LinkedIn. George is also great for that. So with that awesome introduction that I did, I will kick it over to Mr. George Leith. Everyone welcome George. Yay.
Thanks, Colleen. Plus, all that content in the Academy wouldn't have been possible during COVID without Colleen, because she made sure I showed up for the sessions and that my hair was better than it is today. Welcome, everybody. Hope you enjoy Conquer Local Connect. We love putting together those presentations and showing you in a concise, hour and 15 minutes, everything that we got cooking here at the rocket ship known as Vendasta. I've been out on the road the past month and a half, pretty much nonstop, working with a new partner of ours. And not that I don't want to tell you their name, it's just I can't, because they signed an NDA and they would rather, as we are a white label platform, that we don't divulge the partnership. But what I can tell you is some anonymous stories from working with sales professionals and local businesses. Because we, one of the things when we were building Vendasta that really was powerful in the 2011, 12, 13 years was we would go into market and do a seminar with local businesses after we had done some training with sales folks. And we continued to refine that process of these, what we call in-market training programs. It's a pretty intensive 3 days. We meet with sales leadership. We then meet with the sales teams, like 9-hour deep dive training, role playing, the whole deal. And then on the 3rd day, we do a seminar with local business folks. And I'm here to tell you that what you saw today in that pitch deck and the way that the information is articulated to the customers, it plays better than it ever has. And this whole idea of customer journeys is something that I think that we have to embrace as part of our language when we're presenting to a customer. We've made some changes to that sideways funnel thing that was built a number of years ago and turned it more into this idea of a flywheel. Insert buzzword, flywheel, like AI, ecosystem, all sorts of other buzzwords. But let's talk about why this is a circle and why it matters. The idea of we have to create awareness for our business. And this is where the lines are blurred a little bit. It's like, is it any different for us as business owners running digital marketing agencies, media companies, telcos, software companies, or our clients? And there is no difference. There is no difference in the customer journey. You have to build awareness for your brand. And then people do research. And the data shows that consumers, whether it's a B2B sale, business to business, or business to consumer, we're doing more research than ever. And that's where findability comes in, because we're going to do a search on Google. And then can we trust the business? And then do people like the business? Is there social proof that other people have worked with this business? As important for all of us on this call as it is for our clients. And then there's some conversion point where the sale happens, whether it's online, it's a booking form, they walk into a physical door, they go to a seminar, some sort of a conversion point, and then they become an advocate. The only thing I don't like about this diagram is that red piece is the promised land. That is the promised land. And you heard through our conversations, Heather was one of the people that talked about it. It's really expensive to get a customer the first time. When we do get that customer, what we're looking for is nirvana, where we expand that customer, we solve more of their problems. So that advocacy piece, that red piece, and I ran this play a couple of times over the last 2 weeks, live with local businesses. What is that? When you really drill into it, that's the story from the very best customers of your business. And that's why it's so important to interact with those advocates, because we want to consume that story. And for all of us on this call that are working with local businesses, that's the hardest thing to get, right? When we talk to the client, we say, what's the unique selling proposition of your organization? And the answer usually goes something like this. Oh, we got the best price, the best service, the best selection. And you're like, no. Be a challenger at that point. Everyone says that. What is unique about your business? If I met with one of your best customers, what would they say? What's that story? Because if we get that story from the advocates, we can then amplify that story in the awareness stage. We can put that content on the listing sources. If you've ever spent some time in Google Business Profile, you know you can plaster that story right in there. We can post that story on social media channels. So we ran this idea of customer journeys and we spent a lot of time on it rather than talking about the tactics that impact the customer journey. The package just rolls into the problems that we already know. But if you don't spend the time with the prospect, and I like to call it discovery, but you gotta put the time in. So I'm going to give you another story. Young sales professional here at Vendasta about 28 months ago or 30 months ago comes to me and says, I had 3 really good months. And last month wasn't as good. What's happening? I need some coaching. And I said, okay, let's look at why your pipeline isn't coming true. And what I found was they weren't doing discovery. They were doing poor discovery. They weren't asking questions. And he was like, no, but I know what their problem is. Of course you know what their problem is, because everybody has the same problem. They need to dial in this customer journey, but you have to go through the motions of asking the questions. So this idea of the $1 million pitch deck and the perfect package, and I'm getting ready to go to Europe tomorrow for a seminar and a keynote next week. And it's with a group that my very first keynote with this group was 6 years ago at Google headquarters in London. No pressure, by the way, in that presentation. And I was on a panel. And at the end of the panel, one of the CEOs of a company raised his hand and said, hey, George, what's the best product that you see that's selling out there on the street? And I was like, boy, you hadn't listened to my presentation for the last 15 minutes. I didn't say that. That was what was running through my head. The product that solves the customer's problem. That's the best product. You can't really define it into one individual tactic. Plus, by the way, the data shows that we don't want one individual tactic. When we solve 4 problems or more, we have a 55% better chance of retaining and expanding the customer. So this whole idea of $1 million pitch deck and the packages that work, and we've got to come up with ways to automate the process and everything else means nothing to the local business if we don't reach them around them. They need to understand that any one of these components could start to cause leakage from the investment that they're making. And they've got to solve the bigger problem. Now, I spent a lot of time over the last 2 months working with advertising salespeople. The organization told me, no, they're consultants. We changed their title 6 years ago to marketing consultants. And then I met with the actual salespeople and they sell ads. That's what they do. And what we need to understand is there's an enormous opportunity in owned and earned media. So you got paid media, that's advertising, and it can run in a lot of different places. But the other parts of this flywheel are earned and owned media. Owned media is your website, local business. You can own that thing. You can build it. You can own it. Nobody else impacts it. You can change it whenever you want. We need to have some owned media. And then we also need to have some earned media, search engine optimization, keyword optimization, where we're figuring out what keywords we could buy. There's a little bit of earned in that. You got to do some work to make that happen. So this flywheel is really important. We spent a lot of time as an organization thinking about it because we had to decide, are we going to throw out that beautiful customer journey map that has been working so well? But what we're trying to get is this idea of it happening over and over and over again. So let me show you how that works. The advocate, your best customer, now they need to see some level of awareness around the new product or service that you're offering, local business. Or a product or service they hadn't considered because that wasn't the first use case or need that they came to you for. So this whole idea that this becomes a circle. And it is the key to expanding the customer. So let's move to the next slide. Insert the story about young sales professional again. What they were doing, there's a terminology in sales calls rushing the deal through the pipe. And what I find a lot of times is we know we have the solution to the problem, but we don't spend enough time proving that we are the place that can solve the problem. So we know we can solve the problem. And I'm talking about your local business customers and their customer journey. They need to be understanding that consumers are going to 15 different places to do research on the brand. And that's where you try to sell them a blog post. I don't know if you need to get that tactical. I think what we need to do is say, what's the story about your business from your advocates, the people who love you? Now let's take that story and amplify it. And a blog might be one thing that we do, or we might write the blog as a listicle and run that as 15 different social posts. Or we might take one line out of the blog as a testimonial and put it into the ad copy and put maybe a 5-star review piece in it. So consumers are going to engage with personalized messaging. We all know that. But yet when I see a lot of local businesses, they're not thinking about that level of personalization. Now, how do we get personalization for our customers? It's about understanding the problems that they solve or the opportunities that they capture. The other thing I hear that scares me a little bit is we're all talking about pain points. And I sat down with a couple local businesses and I did a test. One local business, I sat with them, we're having a coffee, and I said, tell me the 5 things that you're screwing up right now. And I'd met them about an hour earlier, did a presentation. So I built a lot of rapport. They were on my LinkedIn profile chat. No, they didn't know me from a hole in the ground. How do you think that went when I had absolutely no brand buy-in and I said, tell me the 5 things you screw up all the time? It's not just pain points, it's opportunity. So what we also want to say is when we're doing our discovery, we're not just looking for the pain point, we're looking for opportunity that we can capture. And we can do that with personalized messaging. Next slide, please. So when we are presenting our solution with the $1 million slide deck that you guys have been given today that has been proven by data that it works, we want to make sure that we are articulating the reason that the buyer should believe in us. Start with what we know. Deliver our unique selling propositions. Give them a reason to believe. Then we need to personalize the message in the language of the persona or the prospect that we're going after. So that could be the vertical. We need to speak and learn that language. And then and I am a big proponent of this, we need to choose visuals that will resonate. So let's move to the next slide. And I want to get us all understanding this. You're going to have to move forward because we were just supposed to, that's why I should have ran this, but that was my fault. Krista Naher was on the Conquer Local podcast, and I also have been watching some data points around this. 70% of human beings on this earth are visual learners. And I find that we try to articulate very complex ideas without a visualization to guide that person. A lot of what we're doing in sales is pitching. Yes, that's a sales term, but it's also teaching. It's teaching the prospect that they have a problem that we can solve, or they have an opportunity that we can capture. We're teaching the prospect that we're good at this stuff, and we're giving them some reasons to believe that we are the trusted local expert. We're articulating in a language that they understand, meaning in their problem, right, to them. We don't make it too generic so that it doesn't reach the target, and then put some visuals in there that will resonate. Next slide, please. So package the information, even though the package might be the same. Same problem to solve for this business is that business is that business. But what we've got to do is personalize it. We've got to speak to the buyer in language that they understand. We got to pull out a couple of data points that speak directly to either the pain point or the opportunity that we have discovered in discovery. And then we've got to give some success stories that we've solved this problem before. And then what happens is the magic happens. We acquire a new customer. We then expand that customer with other problems that we can solve or opportunities we can capture. And that's those two magical words at the end: rinse, repeat. Come up with the right play and then rinse it and repeat it. Now, sometimes I bet you, and I'm looking at the group on the phone or on the call here, I bet you that all of you have had a shower or numerous showers this month, but you didn't put on the same clothes after each shower. You put on a little different presentation depending upon what you were doing that day. Same thing here. So we rinse the information, we personalize it again, and then we repeat. And the good news is, in the 36 years that I've been doing this, we've never had more robots to help us make this easier. So rather than having to go in and build the whole bloody thing all over again, we can take that package, take some of the value propositions out of it, put a new skin over it with some new technology that's been developed by the wizards here at Vendasta, like Dylan Knowles and team, and make it personalized for the prospect so that they trust even more that we are that trusted local expert to solve their problem. So we're going to open it up for questions. Colleen's going to moderate.
Have to unmute myself. Okay, there was a couple questions in the chat. We're going to go back to Jonathan. So this is when you were talking about advocacy, and he asked about PR and earned media.
Yeah, so it's paid. That's the stuff you got to buy. It's earned, and it's owned. And I think that PR, public relations, is earned. You earn that. You put it on lots of different channels. You got to send it out numerous times. You got to send out a bunch of, actually, Nicole's here from our content team. When we send out a press release, everybody reads it, right? And shares it to their social media channels. And that's why it's called earn. You can see her nodding because that's not what happens. The earning comes from the repetition. The earning also, when we're selling it, we got to sell it to the customer that this needs to be repeated. Now, a customer's going, well, you just want to charge me every month. Yes, I do. But I also want to deliver value every month. And I want to show you that that's working every month. I hope that answered the question.
Jonathan, if it didn't, just let us know and we can elaborate. Next question. Can you give an example of personalized message, please?
Yeah. And I'm wondering if the question you're asking is personalized message for you, trying to attract more customers, or a personalized message for your customer that you're building their marketing strategy for.
Kathy, you asked, can we get a copy of this presentation? Of course you can. Of course, it'll be available in the community for you afterwards. And the recording will be there as well.
So let's go back to the question. It's for us and for our customer. And what I found when we were working with those local businesses, I think we get, and listen, I made this mistake millions of times, probably as many times as all of us on the call put together. We get really myopically focused on our product and our service and our tactics. And we think the customer wants to know where the button is and what it does and what it pushes and everything else. And what they're really looking for is the outcome. So what we're trying to do in this advocacy piece is, what is the raving fan or raving fans of your business? What is the thing they're most likely to say as to why they work with you? That becomes that personalized piece of content. That becomes the nugget that you can then go out and amplify, whether it's in the awareness stage or whether it's in the findability stage, or whether it's something that you want to punctuate when you find an online comment that's been made, or it might be something that you want to put into your website content or your search engine optimization strategy. So the personalization that I'm referring to, it's the hard part because, is it really repeatable? Well, I think it is. If that's your ideal customer and you can personalize the content around it, then you're going to get more of those types of customers. So it's hard to get, but once you get it, then it can become repeatable. Hope that answered the question for you and for your customers.
Joshua asks, so does it make more sense to niche down to a specific industry when starting out?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I am torn on that. I think that niching is really important, but also more than that, who trusts you without you having to send out 1 million emails and build a brand from scratch? And the best part about this, I think most of you that have met me over the years know that I grew up in the media business where I was tied to a stick in the ground. That's how terrestrial radio operated. You could only sell it where people could listen to the bloody thing. So you were tied to an area. Or if you were selling print, you were tied to like a territory. You can call between Main Street and 4th Avenue. Now, enter into the world that we're in, we can sell this stuff to anybody on the planet because they all have the same problems. And it's easier to do it because of this stuff that we're on right now. So I think that niching is important once you figure out where you've got a place that you can win, but where you can win out of the gate is people that you know, uncles, aunts, neighbors, grandparents, kids. If they own a business and they have a pulse, you can come in and help them, right? Like that's where you should probably go first, where you have some trust. And wouldn't you rather practice your presentation and get your talk track down and take all the content that the teams put into the academy? And as you start to run them, wouldn't you rather run that with somebody that you have a level of trust already, where you can ask for some feedback? And then when you find that niche where, whoa, and by the way, that doesn't happen right away. We've got a couple of guests coming up on the Conquer Local podcast in the next month where they talk about the niches that they got good at. And it usually is kind of like the Slack story, right? Have you ever heard about the Slack story, $26 billion deal? But Slack isn't what they started out to build, like a lot of tech companies. So same thing here. You don't quite know where your niche is until you get out there and you start working with some businesses. So I think that the first place that I would go is into your network of people that you know and have a level of trust. And then the niche might just be the thing that hits you in the head one day and you go, oh, why the hell am I not just spending more time over here?
Also, when we're talking about niche in our bootcamp that I'm going to talk about at the end, we do have a specific piece talking about niches and selecting them. Question from Rhonda. When it comes to packaging, is there any data on which package is best based on where the client is in their business growth phase?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the foundational components that build the virtual doorway, and if you've consumed any of the content, you hear me talk about this ad nauseum. And we tested this over the last 2 months, still ring true. They've got to get listed properly. And you can go 100 different directions on that. They've got to have a positive online sentiment. That's happening on structured data sites around reviews, and it's happening on social profiles. They've got to have a good conversion point, and that is either booking or being able to purchase online or find an online catalog. And you got to be able to do it in under 5 seconds or you lose the deal to the competitor. And then you've got to take the information coming from your advocates and then amplify. All that stuff still is true. So that package, what I find though sometimes is they've started doing some of the work, then COVID happened. And they're like, oh, I can get rid of 3 of these things. And then COVID's over. Thank God. And now we're back to normal where people are walking into businesses again and they're like, oh, why am I not getting the conversion out of my ad campaign? It's like, because you turned a bunch of stuff off over here in a package because you thought you didn't need it anymore. It's kind of like the conversation going on right now. I'm reading where, all the finance people, they were like, yeah, during COVID, we didn't have to spend money doing corporate travel. And then they're like, what happened to all that revenue that we lost? Oh, well, you shut off the corporate travel tab. So now they're turning it all back on because the market went back and changed. So changing market conditions, I think, are more important to have a look at, but also where the business is in their growth phase. They probably have forgotten some of the things that got them really good conversion because, the finance people are in there cutting costs. So I think we still need to keep a look at those foundational items. They still ring true. And what I heard from people after, I think we had about 300 business people who came through the seminars. I got to talk to a lot of them afterwards. And they were like, you just reinforced some of the stuff that we'd forgot. We need to get back at it. We need to make a search engine optimization investment again. We are not spending enough time on our Google business profile. Our website needs a little bit of work. We haven't really done any, targeted display, just whatever the answer might have been. What I'm finding though is business owners know more of the tactics. They know more of the things that they should be doing. And they all say, we're going to do it. If we go back to the slide before, the one that hopefully it's not up on the screen there, that do it with me thing is more important now than it's ever been. Thank God we trademarked it. Like they all say they want do it yourself. They all want do it yourself, and then they never do it. Or they do a few things, or they don't know how to do it all. And then do it for me where you just do everything. I think there's a lot of risk there where you're not engaging the customer on a regular basis. You're like, no, they just want me to do everything. I don't even need to check in with them. And then competitors sell against you and other, they're online looking at other stuff. They're trying to chip apart all the work that you did. That's why do it with me. What a big part of do it with me is checking in on a regular cadence, working with the customer. And I hear this, well, that's not repeatable. I heard that from somebody and I'm like, are you kidding me? That's what this is all about. Finding a customer that trusts you enough that they want to talk to you every week, all day long, because we'll just solve more of their problems. We'll become even more important to their business. So this do it with me is more important than ever, but you might have to start some customers and do it yourself because they're like, oh, I want to do it myself. No problem. We got a way to help that. Can you just do everything for me? You're damn right I can, but I do want to set the expectation that we'll check in every week, every month, at the outside every quarter. That's almost too long. 90 days, a lot of shit can happen in 90 days.
That was great. Thanks, George. Jonathan says, I don't believe we can help any client in any industry. I believe we have to know the industry and its problems and use our skills with what we know in particular. Thoughts?
Agreed.
Well said. David, you say generally you agree with Jonathan. The problem is that there's usually industry education info we don't have. Great point. So there's ramp up time, etc. needed to learn before we can figure out how to best solve their problem. And clients don't have that time for us to learn. That is why it's best to focus on areas we know. Let me see. Kathy had a really good point. I think she's still on the call. No, she dropped. No, she's still there. I see her face. When we're talking about the do it yourself from a client, she says they don't do it themselves, then they blame us.
Yeah, and they're going to blame us for something because they're customers. That's how they operate. No accountability, could never have been themselves, So again, it's trusted local expert. And I don't necessarily think that it's all consultation. I think at some point you got to be a challenger. And I see some folks on this call that I've talked to face-to-face where we talk about ideal customer profile. Again, buzzwords, but I like ideal customer profile because you're trying to figure out where you've got a really good fit. And then you can replace a customer if they don't get it. Now, I love customers. You look up customer obsession, probably picture me in the dictionary. I really believe in that. But also I've found that we've had some bad fit customers that have cost us money. Not anybody on this call. You guys are all awesome. But my point is that you got to have a partnership. Or if all we're doing is sell and do it yourself, we're really open to somebody else taking our lunch. What you bring to the table is the do it with me. And sometimes those conversations aren't fun. But also what I found, when you got a customer that's upset, what they're really looking for is somebody to talk to. And let's really figure out why you're upset. And a lot of times what I find is the customer will say, I got to take some ownership on this, but thanks just for calling. Didn't know that you would call.
I just want to call out Jim's comment. We need to trademark. A lot of shit can happen within 90 days.
Please do.
Where is it? Hash asks a question. When it comes to sales velocity, salespeople like to do a one presentation close. His question, is it wise to slow a sales down?
Depending upon the deal size and the complexity, I think you have to. I remember the terminology, the unicorn. We even had an emoji for it. And it was the 2-hour sales cycle. Lead comes in. We're like, oh, we're going to get a flywheel. Right? Where money just rains from the heavens. You don't have to do any work. I think that we're dealing with a real complex problem. If we're going to capture what the real challenge is, we're just selling one thing and there isn't a lot of complexity. You might be able to get that done. They want, maybe they want accessibility for their website. Audio eye, you saw it in the presentation today. You just plug that thing in. Now in the US, they don't get sued, right? That's a thing. The other side of it, 70% of all humans have some level of disability. Like me, old eyes, not able to hear as well. Sean Schroeder on our team, colorblind. That accessibility plugin helps with that. So that could be a one call close. Client of your phones, they are like, yeah, I've got to put this accessibility thing on my website. You get that thing done. But if you want to build them an e-commerce website, make sure their listings are correct, build them a comprehensive ad campaign, plug in Cement, that is not going to happen in one call. And if it does, it's going to churn. See a lot of nodding on the phone.
Always lots of nods when you drop wisdom bombs on us, George. I know you can never get enough.
I don't know
George.
if that's wisdom, Colleen. I think that's my PhD from the School of Hard Knocks, where I really have believed a number of times in my career that, wow, we finally found nirvana where money's just going to put leads in the top of the funnel and money's going to rain out. But we live in this amazing world where we can solve a lot more problems, and that's a more complex sale. I think the trap that we have is if we're just selling one thing, we will be replaced by a robot, or we'll be replaced by somebody on this call that gets that if you solve more problems, it's harder for the client to get rid of you because you're bringing more value.
Okay. We're almost at noon, everyone, and I want to be conscious of everyone's time just because Connected run over. We may have time for one more question. So if you want to drop it in the chat real quick, the first one I see is one that I'll read out and get George to answer. Before we do one last question, I do want to give a shout out to our bootcamp. Jackie had mentioned it before. It's around the 6 Ps, so it's starting October 17th, so that's next Monday. We're going to go through that certification. So it's going to start with the snapshot report all the way to the executive report. And so we're going to look at snapshot, sales and success center, proposal builder, business app, and then executive report. So take your local business from end to end and how to speak to them as well. So you can register at conquerlocal.com. I believe someone is dropping in the chat. Thank you, Nicole. Jennifer, you signed up for it. Not sure what the times are. Don't worry, Jennifer. There's going to be an email coming out soon. Kickoff is Monday at 10:30 a.m. Saskatoon time, so 12:30 Eastern time. I think my math is right on that. And you can hang out with me every day. George is sad that he doesn't get to come and be harassed. I know. What is the commitment on the boot camp? Jonathan, that is a great question. I will drop, it's a lot to explain, so I will drop my email into the chat and I can provide you some more information if you would like. Again, if you go to the link that Nicole dropped, it's free. You saw some testimonials inside of Connect as well. How much time does this boot camp take per week? Kathy, it's about 30-minute kickoff in the morning, and then you get an assignment to do that day that we want you to come back the next day to actually execute on it. So that might be, we want you to call 3 clients, we want you to run 3 snapshots, we want you to book 3 meetings, and what that kind of looks like. Signed up, but no info is on hours. Hours are coming shortly. I promise the email is going out either Thursday or Friday. Okay, if we don't have anyone have one last question for George, if you do, feel free to unmute. Otherwise, I will let you find folks, get along or go on about your day. I know none of you feel like I'm muting, but it's okay. I can keep talking.
Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate you joining. I'll see you when I see you.
I'll see you on Friday at the community session. Robert Davis is coming, talking about accountability. He's excited. I'm excited. Okay, have a great day, everyone. Thank you.